Hello there, I'm Louise. Have you ever run into big trouble while chasing happiness? Well, I am definitely an expert at this. And the very first love experience of mine, which was supposed to lead to a romantic adventure, actually turned into a nightmare. I've never really been popular among the boys. It's not that they totally ignored me, but I really didn't like the ones who asked me out on dates. And I was definitely too shy to ask out the ones I really liked myself. Unlike my best friend Kate, by the way. She registered on one of those dating websites and was happy to choose the guy she wanted to go out with herself. And one night when she, as usual, stood me up for another date, I thought, what the heck, and registered on that same website myself. For about an hour, I was just looking through different guys' profiles. One of them really caught my attention. His name was Luke, and it said that he was from San Francisco, which was not that far from Phoenix, where I live. And he was really something. So I decided to try my luck, and for the first time in my whole life, I was the first to start a conversation with a guy. He answered a few minutes later, and I felt my heart starting to beat really fast, and my palms got a little bit sweaty. After a couple more messages, he asked me to add him as a friend on Facebook, and suggested for both of us to delete our accounts from the dating site. That's practically how I found my love. It turned out that he really was from San Francisco, but right then he was studying at a university in Europe, so he was a little bit older than me. He turned out not only to be very handsome, but also really smart since he was about to get his degree in accounting, and it was really interesting and fun to socialize with him. Our digital romance lasted for about 4 months, and I was ready to swear that I had deeply fallen in love with him when he finally suggested that we meet. Live, face-to-face. Luke said he was about to come home from San Francisco on his spring break. I tried to convince him to drop into my city first, so that we could finally meet each other, But he said that he would be happy to do so if he hadn't been waiting so long to see his relatives, and his granny was really old and not doing well and could die any moment. So he couldn't go anywhere else but home. Oh, wasn't it amazing that he cared so much about his family, I thought. But what really surprised and pleased me was that Luke suggested that I should come to his city to meet him. He promised to arrange a place for me to stay and pay all the expenses I'd incur there. Basically, all that I needed to do was to buy a ticket to get there. The rest was on Luke, as he promised. Oh, by the way, during the time of our digital romance, I'd seen plenty of his family photos, and even his youngest brother John friended me on Facebook. So I was pretty sure that Luke wasn't a maniac or anything, and that I could trust him. Anyway, I decided that if I wanted to be happy with this guy, I needed to come up with a plan on how to visit him there in San Francisco. I knew my parents wouldn't let me do it. I can clearly imagine my mom's anxious face and my dad's speech if they heard about me going to meet a total stranger in a totally strange city. But good Lord, I had friends. Lynette, whose older sister was already studying at a college that was pretty close to my desired destination, suggested that I tell my parents that we were going to visit the city together with her. Apparently, all I needed was some money from my folks, to at least buy a ticket to visit my love. But I also needed a strong alibi, so that even if my parents decided to call Lynette's parents to check everything, I would be cool. That's why I had to promise my friend that I'd be doing her homework through the end of the year if she covered for me. My plan worked out, and Mom and Dad let me go to San Francisco for my spring break. They gave me money to buy tickets and to have a little spending money for when I was there. I have to say, I was more than excited on the day of departure. My Prince Charming met me at the airport. Oh, he was even more handsome than I thought he would be, and he was so glad to meet me. I must admit, it was a bit strange to actually meet the person you had been chatting with for months, but it was still very exciting and pleasant. He took me to a hotel that he had already arranged for me, just as he promised, and since I was starving, we had lunch near there. I couldn't stop looking at him, since he seemed to be even more attractive than I thought he was while looking through his photos on Facebook. But then Luke told me that I'd better get some rest after my flight, and that he had some stuff to do anyway, so he promised to call me a little bit later and left me there all alone. Well, honestly, I was waiting for a more hearty welcome, but I didn't want to spoil the moment. That's why I decided to stay in my room and unpack my stuff until Luke was done with whatever he had to deal with. Seriously, I was hoping for some sort of romantic date or something. So I took a shower, unpacked everything I had, and watched TV. But he didn't call. Well, I might have gotten myself all worked up, but this whole situation began to irritate me. It was already almost midnight when I decided to look through my social media because I was really bored waiting for Luke's call. And suddenly, I felt nauseous from the anger that was growing inside me. I saw that Luke had posted a photo of him and a bunch of his friends, supposedly, only 5 minutes ago. I felt as if I was cheated on or something. I mean, how could he go hang out with his friends? I also thought he could have at least told me the truth, that I didn't need to wait for him because he was kind of busy. Anyway, he didn't show up or even call me that evening or that night, and I went to sleep really irritated, to put it lightly. Of course, I tried to call him, but all I got was his voicemail. And the main surprise was waiting for me in the morning, when after a shower, a light breakfast, and a bunch of unanswered calls to Luke, I decided to go for a walk around this amazing city. But the receptionist girl kindly wondered why I hadn't packed my stuff yet. You will understand my feelings if you have at least once in your lifetime heard that you had to get out of somewhere. I was totally in shock. You see, I thought that Luke had paid for the whole week. I was planning to stay in the city, but it turned out that he had only paid for a single day. So now I had a choice of either paying for the rest of the days on my own or moving out of that damn motel. Try to guess what I did, taking into account that my finances were pretty limited. There I was, walking down the street with my suitcase packed, in a total rush, when I suddenly heard my cell ringing. It was Luke calling. Of course, I picked up the phone and immediately started accusing him of abandoning me and choosing his friends over a girl that had tricked her own parents just to see him. And you know what he said? It turns out that his friends always come first in his life, and since I didn't like that, he should have just stayed away from me. And that's all. He then just hung up the phone, and no matter how many times I tried to call him back, it would go straight to voicemail. Oh my gosh, I was totally upset and scared to death. Imagine I was left with practically no money, no roof above my head, and the only person I knew in that totally strange city had rejected me. I was ready to cry at literally any moment, but then I came to my senses and thought that, unfortunately, I had no other option but to just deal with this situation. You see, I was afraid to call my parents because in this case, I had to tell them the truth, and God only knows what kind of reaction they might have. I tried to make my brain think as fast as it could, and then suddenly I had an idea. I started to look through Luke's Facebook account. His photos and his friends and their photos, I had nowhere to go. And in his brother's profile, I finally found a picture of something that I hoped was supposed to be their house here in San Francisco. I thought it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack to search for this house by the photo I had. So I just wrote to Luke's brother saying that I had something from one of his friends to pass to him and that I really needed the exact address. I was just hoping that Luke hadn't told his family about me. And it wasn't until I had already become desperate and started to look for a perfect bush to sleep under that I finally got a response. I used the last of my money to take a taxi to his house. Luke's brother let me in when I knocked at the door, and it already didn't matter for me what his family might think of me. As a matter of fact, Luke wasn't even there, but his parents were. I couldn't come up with anything to sugarcoat the story I was going to tell, so I just told them the facts. But guess what? His parents also turned out to be subpar people, just like he was. They didn't believe me and kicked me out of their house. Come on, people. Why would I come up with something like this? I had no other option left but to call my parents and tell them the truth. Of course, my dad immediately took a plane to San Francisco and picked me up, but I still had to spend a whole night literally on a park bench while I was waiting for him. At home, I got in so much trouble, which I couldn't even fathom might happen. In addition, my mother installed a special program on my computer, and now she sees who I communicate with and how I communicate on social networks. But honestly, this was not necessary, since the lesson that I received will remain with me for life. How did you like my story, guys? Do you think it was stupid to go see a total stranger, or was he a total jerk? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel.